Thank you all very much for coming tonight. I am Laura Burkhalter, Senior Curator and Co-Curator of Iowa Artists 2025 with Ben Millett. I'd like to begin with thanking our sponsors, which without their support, we would not be able to do this. Art Bridges All Access and the Principal Foundation support free admission to the museum and lectures like this. Our donors and members, their ongoing commitment and support of the Art Center helps what we do here and keep it going into the future. And specific to tonight's subject, thank you to Mike Simonson and the O'Brien Courage and Hope Foundation for sponsoring Iowa Artists 2025. So usually when we're doing a program like this, it's at the beginning of the exhibition, and I'm up here sort of introducing and telling people what a wonderful show they might be about to see, and maybe not everybody's been there. This year, because of timing, we're actually at towards the end of the exhibition. So the things I can talk about to sort of lead you into what Ben will say is the amazing things that have happened in this museum since we have opened Iowa Artists 2025. We've had new visitors who came to see quilts, and they ended up seeing 3 buildings full of beautiful artworks as a bonus. We've had our regular usual suspect visitors who now have a whole new idea of what quilts can be and where they belong, and are now used to seeing them in the Art Center. We've had fashionistas who want to wear Ben's art, and I've been asked more than twice about commissions for making a work, especially when around the time of the gala. This is also in summer, so if it was winter and it was chilly, I feel like you would just be flooded with people wanting warm garments to wear. And because Ben is part of our local community, we've also had many people who are his friends or had seen his work at Mainframe and maybe were familiar and coming to support the local art community, but then just been absolutely blown away by the ambition and the craft and the beauty of your exhibition. It has been a wonderful few months at the Art Center. It has been a joy to work with you. Thank you for the time you have given me, you have given our staff, you have given our audience as you've been through the various programs of the show, and also with students. Ben has done some amazing programs with tour groups of students as guests or part of our students here, which is more meaningful than I think any of us can say. Thank you for warning us that people would go to all sorts of lengths to see the backs of the quilts. Our security team, every time I go through, they have a new story about something weird somebody did to see the backs of the quilt, and that was before it even opened. Ben was like, oh, they're gonna do this, and it has all come to pass. And thank you ahead of time for the insight about your work and what you're going to share with us. And with that, I would like to welcome Ben Millett.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's great to see so many faces that I recognize and faces that I don't recognize, but thank you for being here. Could we bring the house lights down just a little bit? I also just want to give my thanks to Laura and all of the staff here at the Art Center. It's been a fantastic experience for installation and being here. It's been really great. So tonight, I'm going to talk about a selection of my quilts. We don't have enough time in the allotted window to talk about all of them, and you also will want to go to sleep tonight. So we won't be talking about all of them. In my quilt making practice, my recent work has coalesced around a few themes that are represented by the works that are in the exhibition. And these particular themes are queer history and my place in it, pop culture and popular media, and quilt making itself, especially a quilt's purpose, on the spectrum from everyday use to beauty as useful. These two phrases that I just mentioned of everyday use and beauty as useful come from these two publications, screenshots of them. On the left is Alice Walker's short story, Everyday Use. It was published in 1973, And this short story talks about a mother and a daughter having a discussion about where the value of a quilt comes from. Is it the quilt that's on the bed, or is it a quilt on the wall? And Melanie Ann Pauls, in her master's thesis that was published in 2014, takes a feminist approach to investigating that question of value of quilts. And two of the things that she talks about is the value of the utility, that the utility of a quilt is a beautiful thing, and the value of the quilt comes from that utility. And beauty as useful, that the beauty of the quilt can be a useful thing, and you can get value of a quilt through the beauty, through looking at it. So I didn't recognize it until later, but my grandmother gave me some examples. My grandmother Sharon here gave me some examples of incorporating meaning into quilts, and also the variety of functionality of quilts. A lot of who I am and what I do is because of her, and there was never a visit to her house or her to our house without some craft happening all of the time. And it was fantastic. My parents might have a different opinion about that, but we loved it. We loved it. And those of you who know me, if you think that I like green, my passion for green is nothing compared to hers for purple, as you can see from her outfit. And on this particular day, she also had a purple overcoat. But I share here 3 quilts that she gave to me on different occasions. On the left, we have a wall hanging that she made when I was born. We have Raggedy Ann and Andy, and just outside of the frame is Millett in all caps, because I was the first grandchild, and that was really important. In the middle is a twin-size quilt that she made for me in 1994, and was one of 14 quilts that she made that year, because she wanted each grandchild to have a quilt in their favorite colors before she died. She didn't die for another 20 years, but she wanted to make sure that everybody had something from her. And on the right is a queen-size quilt that she made on occasion of my first marriage, and it has potatoes here, and outside of the frame are also tomatoes and eggplants, various solanaceous crops, which is related to my PhD studies at the time. She also incorporated blue fabric and fabric with cats and music for my then wife, so that we could have a quilt. And so I share these because she gave me an example. Again, I didn't recognize it until later. She gave me examples of quilts that have different functionality, that have different purposes, with construction techniques very different from my own. But she was incorporating into these quilts the interests of the recipients, and fun things like Raggedy Ann and Andy. Now, Laura mentioned that this talk is a little later than usual, and one of the reasons for this was we wanted to have this talk in October, which is LGBTQ plus History Month. And I want to use this opportunity to help share some knowledge, bring some history knowledge to you all. Maybe you already all know this, and this will just be a great review. So we're going to start with this particular quilt, Hanky Code. I made this in 2023. I should say I finished it in 2023. I started it in 2021 as a project to clear out my scrap bin. I had a bunch of these color print fabrics and a bunch of strips of white, and I thought, let's just use up all of this fabric. So I was creating these 2 patches, and then later combined these in a log cabin type fashion to make the blocks. But as I was creating these strips and the patches, as they were going under the needle on my sewing machine, I thought that they looked like bandanas. And that made me think of the hanky code and all of the days before social media, before apps and cell phones. Now, I've mentioned the hanky code a few times. Quick show of hands, who, when I say hanky code, what do you think of that's, or do you think of something other than a quilt? Just a show of hands. Fantastic. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, don't worry, I will talk about this. And for this, I'm going to use a photograph from Hal Fisher's series called Gay Semiotics. And this particular photo is called Signifiers for a Male Response. And as you see, there is a man facing away from the camera with various labels like keys pointing at a key ring, earring, and a handkerchief. And then up at the top, we also have labels of left for aggressive and right for passive. In today's terms, you might instead see something like top and bottom, or receptive on the right. And so the idea is you would wear a handkerchief on the side of the body that you were interested in participating in an activity with another person. And so in a world of where you're uncertain of being safe, of wanting to participate in these things but not sure if who else knows, you're able to signal to other people who are also in the know what sort of things that you might be looking forward to doing. And so when I took those blocks and arranged them, I put most of the colors, most of the blocks with color fabric in the top and in the bottom to align with the left and right signaling with a handkerchief. And I wanted to make sure that there were colors in the other quadrants for people who might be a little more versatile in how they signal. So these blocks are 3 inches square, and I wanted to make sure that I shared a photograph before all of the quilting so you could see how everything was pieced, both on the front of the quilt top and in the back of the quilt top. And this is just to give you a sense of how I like to piece my fabric, piece my patchwork. Usually it is entirely pressing open, which means that the seam allowances go to either side of the seam. But somehow there are some patches in here that do have fabric pressed to the dark side. I don't know how that happened. I'm glad that I am only seeing that now, because it's too late to fix that. So as I was assembling it, I was getting worried about how I was going to quilt it, because the quilt top itself was pretty heavy, and I only had a domestic machine, and I didn't want to wrestle with it under the sewing machine. So I thought, let's hand quilt it all. Yes, exactly. So on the left is an example of, in the rows and columns that only had the white fabric, I did this running stitch and these X's with this tan thread. And then in the rows and columns with colored fabric, I did this seed stitch in these meandering paths. And it occurred to me as I was doing this that, especially with the meandering path and the organic nature of the lines and X's, that this reflected the exploratory aspect that could come with the hanky code of what activities am I really interested in, what do I not want to participate in, and just trying to find one's own path in all of this. I started quilting this at the end of, or towards the end, September of 2021, and spent the next 18 months doing the hand quilting. That wasn't back-to-back, constant. I had other projects happening, but this was a quilt that was forever on the coffee table in front of the TV for a year and a half. You do get to see a quilt back here. Not in person, but a photo. For this particular quilt, I wanted to use 16 fabrics that had a bandana-esque print on it. And I'm really happy with this. And like, I love seeing the quilting from the front, but also being able to see the quilting on the back is unfortunately a special treat that you do not get to experience. Sorry. And after I finished this quilt, I did take a break from hand quilting. This was enough for a little bit. There will be some more hand quilting later. Okay, so in addition to October being LGBTQ+ History Month, October 11th is National Coming Out Day, and that was this last Saturday. So I want to talk about a quilt in the exhibition that touches on this idea of self-identification, of identification, and that is not everyone wears a rainbow. This was created in 2023 for the silent auction at One Iowa's annual gala. It's a whole cloth quilt, which means that the entire surface is created with one piece of fabric, which means that the only thing that can take interest is the quilting. And so I used white thread for to match with the white fabric. About the time that I was making this, Iowa passed its Don't Say Gay bill. And I recognized as that was happening that as a cis white male adult, I have more privilege than to be out as a gay man than other people might have. And that is definitely not the case for everyone, whether they live here in Des Moines, in Iowa, in the United States, anywhere in the world, or elsewhere in the world. And so, since not everyone can live authentically or live their authentic self safely, I wanted to make a quilt to honor those individuals. So for this, I gathered 13 words that reflect an identity that you can read some of the examples here. And I traced those in my computer with a vector path so that I could put it into my computerized long arm. And if you're not familiar with a long arm machine, it's comprised of a quilting frame that's 8 to 12 to 14 feet long, and the quilt is stationary. The quilt doesn't go anywhere. But what moves is the long arm sewing machine that moves on top of the quilt to do the quilting. And if you get a computer, you can attach a computer to it, give it a path to follow, and it'll just do it. Obviously not that simple, but you can just push a button and watch and hope that everything works well. Paul, could you play the video, please? So here on the right, we have the initial test of this word of lesbian. And you can see how the machine is here finishing up the letter A, and it's moving along. And I had designed this so that the letters would be quilted from left to right initially, and then right to left, so that they could finish that, and then have this solid line to connect the letters. And that's just to give you a taste of how this machine works. So this is the completed test of all of these words. And just as a test, I changed the sizes and spacing just to see what I thought would work best, and ultimately decided on having a single word per row, and that word repeated across the length of, or the width of the quilt. And they were arranged such that the top, middle, and bottom rows were LGBTQ as a way to help reinforce the umbrella nature of that acronym. But to really mark the authentic self, I used a rainbow fabric as the backing. And this particular fabric was a gift from a fellow gay quilt maker here in Iowa, Eric Wolfmeyer. In this photo, you can see some light reflecting off of a window in the background, so that this lower left corner of the quilt, so that the front is opaque. You can see the white with the quilting, but with the sun coming from behind, you can see the rainbow. You can see the authentic self, even if from the front you wouldn't see that, like in the gallery, for example. And one of the unexpected highlights for me of this exhibition has been hearing how much this particular quilt has resonated with people, whether for their own identity or identity of their family and friends, or even personal reasons that they didn't share with me. And so I'm really grateful to the owners of this quilt that they were willing to share it with us for this exhibition. The next quilt is also from 2023, Progress Pride Stars. And so at this time, thinking about the Don't Say Gay bill, and then also Save Girls Sports that Governor Reynolds signed in 2022, I made this quilt to recognize how much the LGBTQ plus community depends upon each other, and that rights taken from one particular group don't only impact that group. So for this quilt, I started with this block. This is the Missouri puzzle block. And I'm just going to point out that there are these four corners of half-square triangle, these four that are half-square triangle units. And then these four square units that are important to point out to talk about this. So here we have 3 of the mini blocks for this quilt, and for this quilt, each block got assigned one of the colors, one of the 11 colors of the Progress Pride flag. And thinking about that, it wasn't enough for me to have just one block be that color. That didn't show how interconnected the different colors, how the different identities could be. And so here you see orange and brown blocks have exchanged this square unit. Same with the white block and the brown, they've exchanged those. So in the quilt top, again, here we have that brown square. This is the Missouri puzzle block. But by pushing out those colors into the other blocks, it increases the size of that block and shows that interconnectedness. So now the orange block is bigger also, as is the white. And same with the light pink and light blue, red, yellow, and black. And so in this way, with how these blocks are, you can't separate the trans colored blocks, or the blocks with colors representing the trans individuals, or the POC colors from the rainbow colors. They're all interconnected. And if this wasn't enough, we gotta have them interconnected. This is the quilting path that I used. It's a zigzag that I won't trace one of these, but it crosses the other paths. It crosses 4 other paths. So they're all overlapping, all really connected. And so this quilting is just to help emphasize that we all need to hold together and work together, that it's a common goal that we should all have. Unfortunately, we see that this is not a lesson that's fully sunk in yet, that there's some people who think that you can actively take away the rights of trans individuals in the name of unity, and that's not actually how things work. So continuing with the idea of community, but let's look at quilts of a different shape, a different form, of a different use. It's these Midsommar Christian and Midsommar Danny, also created in 2023. These quilted sweatshirts. With these projects, I had more scraps. If you've been to the gallery, you'll know the coat of 365 colors. These are leftovers from that and another ill-advised project in 2020. So I laid these all out in this gradient from light to dark and in a color gradient, and thinking that I was going to make one jacket. And when I saw how much fabric I had, I realized, actually, I have enough to make 2. And I want to use this fabric, so let's make 2. So I divided these into these complements of blue and orange, plus yellow, and green and red, plus purple. These I constructed in an improv manner, sewing the rectangles together to be squares, and then arrange them again in gradients. You see here one sleeve for each jacket laid out, and I've followed this same approach for the other sleeve, for the front and the back of each sweatshirt. And of course, as I was doing this, I was like, how am I going to quilt these? My interest, I really enjoy the piecing, like the designing and piecing of quilts, and the quilting itself is a necessary step a lot of the time. And so sometimes I plan it out, but a lot of times it's just trying to figure out what am I going to do. So for these, I ultimately decided on, you can see the planned paths here of a medium value gray for the one on the left and a medium value green. And I wanted them to be similar, but not identical. So on the left, they're horizontal. On the right, these gentle curves are vertical. And you can see these final quilted here. And this was not with the long arm machine. This was with my domestic machine, just pushing it along, which was fun. Truly, it was. But it was in this quilting step that I knew that I had seen these color stories before. And it was during the step that I realized that it was from the 2019 movie Midsommar, directed by Ari Aster. And at least my interpretation of the movie is that it talks about one woman's search and struggle to find a community that would help her process a traumatic life event. And so these are specifically the scenes that I thought of thinking of these colors. On the left, we have the character Christian, who's arrayed in these glorious yellow and orange hues. He happens to be learning the important lesson of actually supporting the people that you love. And on the right, we have Danny wearing a floral dress and crown, smiling because she has found a community that has helped her process her grief, and she's found fellowship with this group. I probably could have added the full photo of Danny's flower dress, but hopefully you've all seen that. It's fantastic. I want to talk about another inspiration, an aesthetic that I'm drawn to, and those are color field and hard edge paintings from the mid-1900s. These are photographs that I took of 4 pieces of the Art Center's permanent collection as they were out over the years. On the left, we have Helen Frankenthaler's Sky Farm. We have Kenneth Nolan's Whirl, Larry Zox's Barnard's OPH, and Ellsworth Kelly's Yellow Blue. And just talking a little bit more about Yellow Blue, whenever I see Ellsworth Kelly's painted canvases, whether they combine form and ground, like with Yellow Blue, with this yellow form on the ground of blue, or like his later paintings that take the canvas and make the canvas the form on the wall, and the wall becomes the ground. Whenever I see these, I remember how powerful that these large areas of even, consistent colors can really be. And so I wanted to explore that idea and see, is there a way that I can incorporate some of the ideas of color field into quilt making? With the challenge being that one of the aims of color field is and hard edge painting is to eliminate the hand of the maker. You don't want to see brush strokes, you just want everything to be even. And with quilting, you're literally piercing the quilt top with thread, and you're breaking up that surface. So what is something that I wanted to see how I could bring those two ideas together. And this is that exploration in 2024. Ode to Ellsworth was the name that I gave to this exercise. And talking first about the top quilts, which are 1 and -1. To construct these, I put the 2 pieces of fabric on top of each other, the blue and yellow, and took a rotary cutter and did a gentle curve that was more inspired by yellow blue than an exact curve. It's definitely not exact. And this is also definitely a less precise approach than Ellsworth Kelly would have made. But I wanted to have this curve. And thinking about quilting, on the left, for 1, I used machine quilting under my domestic machine. It's a consistent thread color of white across all of the quilt, and fairly even lines. On the right, for -1, I alternated between the machine quilting and hand quilting, and with the hand quilting, I use color coordinating thread. And between these two, at least in person, I felt that the -1 with the hand quilting, to me, it gave a more consistent feel to the quilt, and the color felt more consistent. And so I wanted to see, is it because of the color coordinating thread? Is it because it's hand quilting? What is it? So for the second example, I wanted to use more of Ellsworth Kelly's own approach of using shape and shadow, and use this photograph that I took of a parking garage in Phoenix, Arizona, while I was at QuiltCon, the quilting convention for the Modern Quilt Guild in Phoenix. And with these, instead of using just primary colors, I used 2 shades of green, 2 values of green. These quilts started with the same size of fabric as the blue and yellow one, but because of the more intense piecing that's on here, they shrink and they're smaller. Also with the quilting, you won't see it on here, but actually I'll save that tidbit for just a slide. But for the quilting for these, on the left for 2, I did 3 lines of hand quilting and 1 of machine, and all of the hand quilting thread is the same lighter green color across all of it to have that consistent nature. And on the right, I did the same as -1 with color coordinated thread for the hand quilting. And again, I thought that -2 was more effective than 2. And so this leads me to think that it's the color coordinating thread more than the hand quilting itself that gives the more consistent feel. As you look at these, you might think that they are rectangles, they are parallelograms. Because of how the hand quilting ended up, they're no longer square. And I didn't want to trim off anything. I wanted to save every last bit. So just to add a little dimensionality to these. Okay, we're gonna pivot a little bit again, but this time talk about a quilt that is informed by a favorite piece of art and also pop culture. This is the Book of Benjamin, and it was finished in 2025. The structure for this book, I looked back to the very modern, very popular, the Book of Kells, which was created in 800 AD in Ireland or Scotland. We're very recent. So with these, if you're not familiar with the Book of Kells is an illuminated manuscript that has the first 4 books of the New Testament, also known as the 4 Gospels. And if you're not familiar with those, these 4 books tell the life story of Jesus Christ. And some of the stories overlap between the 4 books. Some of the stories are unique to one of the books. It really depended on what the author of that book wanted to tell about Jesus's life. And so here we have 3 examples of pages from the book. On the left, we have the Chi Rho page. We have the Chi and Rho that are the first letters of Christos. In the middle, we have an example page of one of the text pages. We have the text with the initial letters being larger and filled in with color, and there are some marginalia to add some decoration. And then also the index, and one of the index pages that has, these last 4 columns have the different stories that are in each of the books, and some of them are connected. Anyway, it shows how the stories relate across the 4 books. So with this, I used this format to tell one perspective of my own life story. And rather than using my own words, I took phrases from different songs and arranged them into a poem. And maybe you'll recognize some of these words as I read it. A vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. Without losing a piece of me, how do I get to heaven? I'm all out of faith, this is how I feel. Pray to the truth that you're denying. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. I find it hard to tell you because I find it hard to take. Dark in my daytime and torture my night. I don't know how I got this way. I'll never be all right. As I get older, I get more afraid. Should I stay? Should I go? Should I run far away? I can't change. I can't change, and I don't want to. I will face my fear. Once, I had a secret love. I think of him, and I'm happy with the company I'm keeping. Y cuando me regarde, je sens mon cœur de battre. Your swagger and your bearing, your touch is contagious. Contigo yo quiero envejecer. I'll always be there to help us survive being alive. True love knows no sacrifice. If we're all going to die, let's party. And we quietly will exit as it all is happening, because paradise is somewhere where you and I belong. These words were quilted on loose leaf quilts, that is white fabric with blue lines, being slightly larger than 8.5 by 11. Initial letters were filled in with various quilting designs, and marginalia were added. The color of the thread for each page was selected from a gradient of rainbow, starting with blue, ending with green. Maybe you'll need to use your imagination. Maybe you can see some holes along in this gap where I just unpicked some thread. I needed to make the page just right. So I unpicked the thread, which I was glad that this was a quilt and not vellum with ink, because I didn't want to have to redo the page. So I also created an index with the title, artist, and soon-to-be album on here, and then I added some color from the page that this song was used on to help relate back to what page you could go to for that. For the cover, I used a large letter B for my name with computerized quilting, and then I later supplemented this with hand quilting using the same gradient thread, same gradient of color across this. And all of these pages were then bound together into a book. And here at the Art Center, the book is displayed one page at a time. And on a regular cadence, once a week on Mondays, a page is turned. So if you want to see the entire book in person, not in photographs in the gallery guide, you have the opportunity to come every week. Which, just so you know, is twice as fast as the Book of Kells. So we're a little faster here. Okay, so this quilt does have a function. You're probably not going to get very warm with it on you, but that's not really how you would use this quilt. You would turn the pages, you would read the words, you could even admire the construction and the message. And you could also contemplate how your own story might be told, whether by you or someone else, and what sort of stories would be important in that. You could also remind yourself that you really need to rewatch Natalie Imbruglia's music video for Torn. That's a good one. Okay, this is the last quilt that I'll talk about tonight. It's If I Had Said Yes, and it was finished in 2025. This is another quilt with an autobiographical aspect to it. I really enjoy media with alternate timelines, with multiple universes, with variants of an individual across all of them. And this is an image from Marvel's Loki series. And I really enjoyed this one. And in this image, you happen to see this yellow or this white line that is the sacred timeline. That's the official. That's supposed to be the official timeline. But you also have all of these lines coming off of additional universes being created. And there's a variant of an individual in every single one of these. And so I was thinking, what if I explored moments of my own past that would have spun off a variant of Ben. And it would have happened at a moment when I had said yes, when I had accepted my identity at an earlier point in time. And it could have been any number of reasons that I didn't accept it, including that I didn't realize that I had that choice, but I wanted to explore what that might look like as a quilt or a set of quilts. So as a starting point, I used this green and white 9-patch block, added in a curve unit and 3 birds in the sky units to create this basic block all the way at the end. So I selected 21 possible events from, like I said, from my life, and a third color was chosen by selecting from the 21 shades of green that I could choose from here, with the darkest being the furthest back in time, the earliest Ben, and then a lighter green for more recent events. And let's add in a fourth color. And for that, I looked back to Gilbert Baker's Pride flag. Remember, it is LGBTQ History Month. So at this time in 1978, the gay movement had been using this pink triangle as a symbol. Many of us know that it was used that it originated as a Nazi tool of oppression and was reclaimed. But Harvey Milk and a friend of Gilbert Baker's wanted a new symbol. They said, for the dawn of a new gay consciousness and freedom. The 1976 bicentennial brought, dare I say, an excessive usage of the American flag. And Gilbert Baker saw the proliferation of this flag and said that a gay nation should have a flag too, to proclaim its own idea of power. And as a quick aside, this bicentennial also saw a resurgence of quilting, which we're here talking about quilts, which is perfect. And so Gilbert Baker's idea for a flag for this gay nation came to him from a night on a dance floor, as he said, full of people of all types in a swirl of color and light. And the 8 particular colors that were chosen had a word assigned to them by him. And he did this because he said each color would represent an element of everyone's life. And so, having these 8 words, I went back to my list of 21 and thought which of those words best fits that particular event, and used that color to assign that to those events. So now with these 4 colors and the base block, I could assign each color to a patch, and also just to make them as different as I could, each quilt block has a different orientation of the curve unit and the birds in the sky units, as you look across those. So now that I have the block, I wanted each quilt to have 9 blocks. So now we have 21 quilts with 9 blocks each. And each of these quilt blocks within each quilt are rotated in a different way. So I really wanted to maximize how random they could be. So then I went and cut the fabric and assembled everything. And then I got to the quilting step. And surprise, I actually knew what I wanted to do for this. For this, I wanted to make sure that all of the quilts had something consistent across them. So I designed this half-inch channel with white thread that's quilted across all 21 quilts using my long arm machine. I wanted to add hand quilting, bring my hand into all of this. And so for a given block, I marked out 4 lines and assigned each of those one of the colors of the fabric to coordinate with the thread colors. And then quilted by hand all 9 blocks. And so then we had this finished, well, I still had to bind it, but you get the idea in terms of quilting. And then I repeated that for all 21 quilts. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through every single one of those. That's your homework. You get to go to the gallery, to the Lower Meyer Gallery, and look at each quilt and see how the quilting is. Make sure yes, okay. So in each of these 21 timelines that spun off, there are individuals living their best lives. I don't know what they're doing, but they're having their best life. And each of them is an individual. So each of these quilts is an individual. It could stand alone. It has its own block, its own color palette, its own hand quilting design, its own block arrangement. It is its own quilt. And all 21 quilts have the same background fabrics of the white and green. They all have the same block components. They all have that computerized long arm quilting that I just mentioned. So across all of those 21 timelines, they're all the same. They all represent the same person. I designed these quilts knowing that they would be on one of the walls there in Lower Meyer, and until they were installed and hung up, I hadn't seen them all together physically. I'd seen like the digital versions, and I was like, yeah, that'll be okay. But seeing them in person was fantastic, and I was really happy with how they all came together. So I'm going to leave this up just to wrap things up, because I want to leave you with some questions, some things for you to consider. And these are all questions that I've wrestled with when I've been at the cutting mat, when I've gone over to the ironing table, when I sat down at the sewing machine, when I was on the couch with needle in hand. And these are all questions that the quilts in this exhibition encourage of you. Who are you in all aspects of that phrase? What led you to where you are now, and who helped you get there? Why is it that you do what you do? Is it just for show, or is there a purpose to it? Who are you in community with? Who should you be in community with? What is in your life that you need to say yes to? And less seriously, but maybe more importantly, is why is it so satisfying to have your quilt block points match? Thank you for your time.
All right, we have come to the Q&A portion. Ben, that was great, and I really want to ask the audience some of these questions, but I know they want to ask you questions about what they just saw. So if you would raise your hand, we have a microphone on either side. We'll pass it down to you. I'll get things started. So one of the things that I was thinking about, and then, did you see a question over here?
Yeah, Laura. If you want to raise your hand. Go ahead, Jill.
Okay, I'll start and then we'll pass it over to you. So my question is just seeing you map this presentation out and hearing you talk about like all of the decisions that are made in the process of making these quilts. Like where do you have that space? Like, is it in the car? Like, are you thinking about all of these connections all the time? And then when do you, in that creative process, like say, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, or is it even still when you're working?
I usually like to have everything planned out before I start cutting fabric so that I know exactly how much fabric I need, so I don't end up with a house full of fabric. But so like the ideas for how I want to, like what I want to do, like design-wise, is happening all of the time. Usually like in downtime when I'm like not at work and stuff like that. But that's happening all the time. But all the connections of what that particular design might relate to, that is usually coming to me as I'm making it, and is usually coming when I'm making it and assembling all the patchwork.
So it's really like organized at that point already. But like
Yeah.
when you watch a movie, can you watch a movie, or are you thinking about the quilting and the connections?
I like to have some handwork with me, but if it's something that I've not seen before, I will put the everything aside so I can focus on that. But when I'm hand working, it's stuff that I've either seen or don't feel as critical to get everything.
Got it. I just think it's fascinating. Thank you. Okay, we're here in the middle.
This is kind of an observation question. You were telling us about hanky code, and you said that there's the way you ironed the fabric in the back was to the inside versus to the outside, and you felt like that was not how you would have preferred to do it. But looking at that quilt and all the white field, I thought that was kind of utilitarian way to do it, so you wouldn't have color showing through.
Yeah. So yeah, with the hanky code, well, in general, independent of hanky code, I almost always press my seams open so that I don't have to worry about color of like the darker one bleeding through the front of the lighter fabric. So if they're both pressed away from each other, they're not going to cross. But somehow, with those particular patches that I did press to the dark side, I think I'm just going to give past Ben some grace and say that he wanted to make sure that he was not having the dark color come through, and that was a quick way to iron and just keep going. I mean, right now, today I find it easier just to press open than to press to one side, but I know there are other people who find it easier to press to the dark side instead of pressing open.
Yeah.
Testing. Okay. So do you find the future, are you thinking maybe of exploring different fabric types with some of your future ideas, and does that make you nervous or excited?
I really like to work with solid fabrics because at least with print fabrics, I find it too, I don't have enough control over what I can cut and have the print just right. And so looking forward, I plan to continue using solid fabrics. I'm debating between manufacturers right now for a variety of reasons, but Yeah, one of the reasons why I really like the fabric line that I use, which is Robert Kaufman's Kona Cotton, is that there are 365 colors that I can choose from. And when you throw in dye lot differences, it's maybe like 2,000 different colors. But it does give me more to choose from for that.
Prints hide your mismatched corners.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you had them,
There
you
was
don't have
there was the comment that prints can hide your mismatched corners. So.
I'm curious, as an artist, you have a lot of different mediums that you could have chosen from, and it sounds like you had exposure to a lot of different crafts and mediums as a child. What drew you to quilting? Why was this, or why is this, your chosen medium to express yourself?
There was something about, so I had a cousin who was getting married, and my grandmother was no longer able to make the quilt for her. And I volunteered myself to make this queen size quilt for this cousin. That particular process was fine. I had parameters to work within, and it was fine. I had a nephew who was being born shortly after that, and I used the leftover fabric from that queen size quilt to make the nephew's quilt. And I really enjoyed just the thinking through. I have all of these half square triangles. How am I going to arrange them in a design that is appealing to me? And I think it was the tactility of that, rather than setting things up just right with pixels digitally, which is satisfying, but it was different having that touch to it, and really being able to go from there with that touch aspect, I think, is what got me. Also, the various functionalities that a quilt can have. You can give a quilt to a baby for a baby to lay on, or the parents could hang it up on the wall, or they could use it to cover a motorcycle, whatever. There are lots of functions for that, and that appealed to me more than something that is fixed to always be on a wall.
I have a couple questions. The first one, for the batting, for the ones with the letters and the rainbow on the back, what kind of batting to make it translucent like that? Or was it an accident?
It was a happy accident. It was just a cotton batting that was a little thinner.
Okay. And then also on the last quilt, are you going to join them together, marry them together, or just leave them all separate?
I'm going to leave them separate.
Okay.
But it's all one piece, so all 21 will go with each other.
And you know the order of them?
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't care about my points. I got rid of that a long time ago, and that was to be crazy. So you got to get over it, the points, yes.
Lauren.
Number one, thanks for being here and sharing. I was just wondering, is the National Quilt, there used to be a national quilt for people who died of AIDS,
The AIDS quilt?
the AIDS quilt. Is that still a thing?
It is.
And where are all the quilts stored, do you know? I know they're on display at times.
I
But-
don't know where they're stored.
Okay.
I want to know. I haven't asked that question yet.
So Barbara Fossbinder was an RN who actually lived in Cedar Rapids, and I ended up working in the emergency room at Cedar Rapids, but she was the first healthcare worker who died of AIDS because of a needle stick.
Oh.
And she was from Iowa. So her family's still in Iowa. They were beekeepers. And long ago, I made a quilt displaying her life, and it went back to the husband finally. But I was just, so he has that, but it was never part of the national
AIDS project.
Sure.
But I was always curious. I'd love to see the rest of it, or some of it, and I just don't know where it is.
I think that it's a foundation that does national activities around it because there's often portions of it displayed. So I think probably the foundation controls its care and dispersal, and I know they add to it all the time, obviously, as well, too. Okay.
Hi, Ben. Congratulations. It's a beautiful body of work. I have two questions. In the beginning of your presentation, you had a tag that would said something like, sincerely made by Sharon. I was wondering if you signed your work and how you do that, your pieces. And then my second part is a curiosity question about exhibiting at the Art Center and like the length of time from when you knew you were going to be hanging all of these beautiful things in here to like how much time was there from when you knew this was going to happen to when like you were hanging it on the wall? Just a curious question.
Sure. First, how I label my quilts is I have learned to label my quilts. I didn't originally. Now it's just a scrap of fabric that I write the name on and whip stitch it to the back. The second of about time frames and all of that, Laura talked with me, it was in April. I met with Laura here in April, and then of 2024. And that night, I had a kidney stone, which took me to the hospital, which led to a test that determined that I had colon cancer. Which that's a lot of information. Just to say that I was physically out of commission for about 4 months. So I was designing some things like if I had said yes. But it was when I was done with chemo in September of 2024 that I could go back to the studio and dive back into making. So if I had said yes, I finished that in May in time for the photographs needed for the catalog. And then I was like, what am I gonna do? I need quilts to make. I was fine, but yeah, it was a good transition.
And then I saw the gentleman up there, and that we'll have that be our last questions for the night.
Okay, just listening to you, I'm assuming that you don't work on one project at a time. So how many projects do you have going right now? And are there any big themes that you're really excited about?
I have one project going at a time. With the asterisk that it's one project in one phase. So I might be piecing one quilt and thinking about how to quilt another quilt, but more often it is focused entirely on one quilt. You asked, what am I looking forward to? There are some things. I think for right now, I'll just keep those to myself, but I appreciate the question. Yeah.
All right, everyone, let us thank Ben for his time.